How's it going, everyone? I'm Chase Lee reporting for DallasMovieScreens.com, and I got another movie to review for you guys, and that would be The Founder. This one stars Michael Keaton. He plays real-life person Ray Kroc, who took a hamburger stand owned by the McDonald's brothers and basically expanded it into a big franchise, and basically the McDonald's that we see today. And, he is very well documented for taking the McDonald's, brand or whatever and skyrocketing it when the McDonald's brothers didn't want to, and so that caused some conflict and whatnot. So this is the story that we have. I was looking forward to this quite a bit. The Weinstein Company was supposed to release this back in August of 2016, but they pushed into December for a limited release for Oscar consideration, and now it's going wide this Friday, January 20th. So what did I overall think of The Founder? This has got to be one of the most conflicting reviews I have done in quite some time because I honestly don't know how to feel about this movie. So let's get real and break this down. Maybe my grade will sway as I'm talking about it. I have no idea. I have a grade set. I just don't know where I'm going to lie with it yet. So, all right, let's start with the writing and directing of it. So the writing itself and the actual story is very fascinating, and I always love seeing these real-life stories and stuff, whether it be good or bad, and kind of show some of the companies or websites that run today and like where they actually started and like just kind of like the behind the scenes nature about these stories. I've always been fascinated about that stuff, even if the person that we're following is terrible. But I think the story itself is just really interesting, especially for someone that doesn't really know like kind of the origin of how McDonald's blew up. Because in the 50s, we had the McDonald's brothers who had the original one in California, and they had a couple other locations, and they were trying one out in Phoenix, and that's as far as they went. Ray Kroc comes in and he expands it, and he tries to sell franchises to people, and that's how the business grows. And then he eventually starts taking credit for everything. It's just what a terrible person, but we'll get to that in just a second. But as far as the actual story goes, I was very compelled by it and just kind of to see where it would go, even though I kind of had an idea of where it was going to go before I even walked into the movie. I think it was just intriguing from start to finish about the history of McDonald's and where it basically blew up and everything. So story-wise, I think it's actually pretty good. Character-wise, that's a completely different story. Besides the McDonald's brothers, everyone else is terrible in this movie, and I don't mean like terrible performances. I mean terrible character-wise. And once again, not written terribly. Their personalities are awful, and their characteristics are awful, and they're awful human beings. Michael Keaton playing Ray Kroc. This character is a slime ball. He really is. And when you realize like how McDonald's started, now you kind of don't want to support them anymore. And after all these years of like eating there, and this is why I'm like a big dude in general and stuff. I don't eat there anymore. But when you find out about just everything that he did behind the scenes, like it makes you feel kind of dirty and stuff. And he's the guy we're following and whatnot. And it's just, I thought it was really fascinating that we kind of, focused on him a lot. The McDonald's brothers, on the other hand, they were kind of like the yin and yang. We had one brother that was against the greediness and whatnot. And then one brother was like, oh, it'll be okay and stuff. But then they get screwed over, and it's just like, okay. And then on top of all that, all the characters outside of those original three are also very either bland, one-dimensional, or just not good people at all. Like some of the people he sells franchises to are terrible, stuck-up people. Even his wife, played by Laura Dern, first of all, there was no chemistry between Michael Keaton and Laura Dern's character. I never felt like they were married. Maybe that was kind of the point because they were drifting, away, apart and whatnot. I thought her character was very underdeveloped, and she was kind of underused. There was really nothing for her to do. And, there was a couple scenes where, it was trying to get serious for like her and Michael Keaton, and I didn't really feel anything. So, because she had some pretty nasty characteristics about herself, being stuck up and whatnot. There are some, franchisees that were, it felt like they were good people and whatnot. But for the most part, the bulk of this movie, the people that you follow are terrible, besides the McDonald's brothers. My God, did they get screwed over? Yeah. So in terms of like the actual story and the writing part of it, it's not a badly written movie. I think it's actually a solid movie when it comes to that, whatnot. But going on to the directing side, John Lee Hancock directs this movie, and he the film he did previous was Saving Mr. Banks, and he's done films like The Blind Side and Alamo and whatnot. I've always found John Lee Hancock, besides Saving Mr. Banks, because I thought it warranted in that time era, all of his films seemed a little too glossy, a little too fake, artificial, very Hollywoodized, didn't feel really gritty and really kind of grabbed you emotionally. Saving Mr. Banks was the first one where I went, that was really good, Mr. Hancock. What you got for us? And I think the founder actually does play the strengths of like a Saving Mr. Banks, where, you know, your film is set in the 50s and 60s, so you have like the color and the pizzazz of the art direction and set design and costumes and cars and whatnot to really kind of help the overall direction of this movie to kind of craft an interesting story with some great visuals and whatnot. But some of the negatives on the directing is that it was kind of conflicting tone-wise a little bit, because there were a lot of scenes in the movie that were kind of like happy-go-lucky and whatnot. Everything's going fine. The business is booming. But at the same time, Ray Kroc is screwing these people. And then you would have like music in the background that felt like that was stock music that you would find in like a Sears or something, that just like that happy-go-lucky like drone music. You're like, yeah, everything's fine. Everything's good, y'all. No, it's not. There was a couple things that happened in that, but if I go into any more points, it'll be spoiler territory. But it felt like the tone was conflicting with the music and just everything happening in the scene. And some of the scenes that were supposed to be very serious and emotional were very quick and didn't really have time to breathe or whatnot. I honestly think this film should have been directed by someone like a David Fincher, who directed The Social Network. And I'm going to, compare that one to this, because it's kind of like along the same lines of like someone that kind of screws people over and creates something very big that we all know today, Facebook. So I feel like for the emotional gripping like intensity that you would want from like something like this, like a true life story, it doesn't have to be like super like, action heavy or whatnot. It could be dialogue driven, but I wanted a little bit more weight to it. And I don't think John Lee Hancock is the person to do it, but I think Saving Mr. Banks was like the only one I think worked for him. This one like is okay in some parts, but then okay or not okay in others. So the direction is kind of a hit or miss, but the story overall is fascinating, even though I don't really like the characters that much, except for the McDonald's brothers. Acting wise, this is where one of the positives comes in. Michael Keaton is great in this film. He is disgusting. He makes you want to hate him, but he almost has like that likable charm to him. But I say almost, and I'll get that in just a second. But he completely sells it. I buy every single scene that he was in. He felt like a salesman to me. He was very prompt, persistent, and he was just focused on getting the business to grow. And, that's what his character is. Nick Offerman and the other guy that plays the McDonald brother, I thought they were great with the whole yin and yang. Like both of them portray their personalities very well, and so I believe that. Like I said, Laura Dern didn't really have anything to do. And there's a couple of actors that pop up in this, but I'm not going to say who they are because it was kind of a nice little surprise for me. But even their characters are a little bit underdeveloped, and they just kind of go in and out of scenes and whatnot. So, but you mainly go see this movie for Michael Keaton, and I think he does a good job delivering kind of like that slime ball attitude you would see from someone wanting to grow Monopoly. But at the same time, he almost has kind of a charm to him. Case in point, a lot of people, when they look at Wolf of Wall Street, it's about Jordan Belfort, who in Wall Street was a very terrible person and screwed a lot of people out of money. But we are fascinated by his story and kind of like his rise and fall of greed, to where I almost felt sorry for him. I felt a little charmed by his tactics and stuff. So there was a lot more depth to him versus like Michael Keaton. That was like, yeah, first 10 minutes he seems normal, and then switch happens, and then he just turns this terrible person. And even at the very end, they try and make him somewhat good and somewhat remorseful, and like there were some facts at the end of the movie that kind of make him look good. It's too late at that point, and throughout the entire thing, he's just awful. And then it sends a very terrible message at the end of the movie. It's like, so it's okay to screw people over like this. So it's a very like confusing, like kind of terrible message to that end of that movie. And to be quite frank with you, I have no idea why this movie was made. It's an interesting story, but it could have been done in more like a short form aspect. But Michael Keaton does kind of drive the movie to make it, at least a watchable, solid film. Cinematography wise, there's nothing really amazing about the camera work at play, but the colors from the 50s and the 60s and stuff, and the like I said, the set design, art direction, costumes, cars, and all that stuff. That was beautiful to look at. It really kind of puts you back into that time frame. So I really do appreciate the cinematography and the colors that kind of pop from it. Like I said, camera techniques are not like, like, woo, that was fantastic. There's no shots that you really remember. There was a couple that were interesting, but overall, it was just kind of like a blandly shot movie. But that's with most of his movies. I've never found his cinematography to be like extraordinary anyways. Editing wise, the movie's about, I believe, a couple hours long. For me personally, I was intrigued throughout the entire story, even though I knew what was going to happen. It does feel a little long-winded in its premise because it is like the same thing happening over and over and over again. And plus, when you have a very unlikable character, there's a lot of, palm to forehead moments. You're like, wow, I can't believe I'm watching this. I can't believe we're glorifying this guy. But I think overall, the Weinstein Company was making this an anti-McDonald's movie. So, I mean, that's fine. But still, following this guy it makes the movie like just feel very long in general. But I didn't really mind the pace of the film, but I could see where it could be an altercation for some people. Music-wise, like I said, very conflicting with the actual scene and what was happening with the dialogue and the characters and stuff. Music's fine, I guess, but sometimes it felt like stock music and it felt very generic and whatnot. Overall, guys, this is where I'm struggling. So, okay, I think it's a solid film. I wouldn't go anywhere beyond it, beyond the word solid. It's a nice little biopic about a terrible person that did very questionable things. But like I said, with like The Social Network or like The Wolf of Wall Street, when those two movies have really great Class A directors, it makes the movie pop a little bit more, whether it be in the camera work, the editing, the direction, or overall tone of the film. Those films do display terrible people, but it's shot and made in such a way to where it just kind of elevates it into like that next level where you didn't expect to love a Facebook movie or a movie about a terrible person in Wall Street. This has, like I said, a nice, clean looking feel to it to where I wouldn't go anywhere beyond solid. And Michael Keaton's performance is noteworthy, but when the character is so bad and the ending has very questionable messages and you have a questionable character doing very questionable things, screwing people over, screwing people in business, in his life, screwing over friends, it's not really someone you can kind of celebrate. But maybe this is a cautionary tale for, money is going to win over. Greed is going to win over, people with that don't really like that. So I don't know. Very conflicting message. So I don't know, guys. I think overall I'm going to give this movie a B-, like B as in boy. I was debating on B- or C+, but I just think there's a lot of good elements in it to bring it up to that B-, but I'm not going to go anywhere above that just because, like I said, Ray Kroc, yeah, he brought us McDonald's and he pretty much set that as an American staple, but the history behind it is very questionable and it almost makes you question ever supporting that company or ever even eating there. So what did you guys think of The Founder, or have you even heard of it? Comment in the place for my face and let me know. It's very hard to recommend it to people, but I gave it a B-, so take that for what you will, guys. I'm Chase Lee reporting for DallasMovieScreens.com. Sorry this review was long-winded, but like I said, this movie was conflicting with me morally and just spiritually and just emotionally, everything. I was split down the middle. I was just like, well, do I like it? Do I hate it? I don't even know. So hopefully this helps you guys out. So I will see you guys next time for whatever I review next. See you guys later.